Skate Story is an unforgettable fever dream in interactive form. Developed independently by Sam Eng, with a few collaborators and contributors, this game fuses Tony Hawk's skating-style video game mechanics with a surrealist avant-garde narrative that is all garnished with an 80s-style synthwave soundtrack, which are all incredibly disparate elements, but do overall combine to create a very memorable experience that overall hypnotizes the player with its sense of style. Style that Skate Story is dripping with in abundance. Because as kids and the kid adults that are younger than me say, it's a vibe. Hell, we get this from the game's setting alone. In fact, this skating game takes place in the Underworld. Like literally, you're skateboarding through hell. Albeit one that's less fire and brimstone and more like New Jersey. Amidst this setting, we follow our main protagonist, who is a nameless demon whose body is made of glass. And the devil, as the devil is wont to do, offers our demon a contract, proposing a deal to free our demon's soul, no relation, in exchange for devouring the moons in the Underworld. Now, these moons aren't like our regular boring-ass moon who is a chronic underachiever that needs to get up off its ass. No, these are moons with magical and mystical properties. But anyway, the point. The Devil's Ask is a tough, near impossible task for our demon to complete, and that's even before factoring in how the Underworld's bureaucracy consistently constructs obstacles between our demon and his end goal. However, the devil sweetens this delicious pot by tethering our demon to a skateboard, which is both pretty punk and metal. So from there, our demon utilizes his skateboard to traverse the 7 layers of the Underworld, and often doing so with incredible style, as he attempts to earn his freedom from corporate hell. Skate Story is pretty damn good. In fact, narratively, this game's story works because its world works. Like the Underworld as a bureaucracy, while not new in fiction, is nonetheless a great angle and setting for a skateboarding game. After all, punk rock revolves around rebelling against authority, and seeing as skateboarding is associated with punk rock to the point of inseparability, that means skateboarding is also a symbol inherent to punk rock culture, and thus, by law of transitive property, is rebellious by default. Which makes a lot of sense considering that skateboarding often occurs outside of skate parks and is instead done on property owned by either the government or private businesses, essentially mocking the more official nature of these locales by transforming them into an impromptu playground. If anything, skateboarding on these properties is just a major middle finger to any and all establishments, which is why Skate Story's corporate and bureaucratic hell really does befit the game's genre as a skateboarding game. It makes logical sense. Additionally, the narrative has a dreamlike quality as well. Earlier in this review, I described Skate Story as being surrealist, and for sure I meant that for a couple reasons. Firstly, it's a game where skateboarding is both the title's most important form of traversal and also the demon's primary weapon. And secondly, Skate Story's narrative is set in the Underworld and thus doesn't follow the rules of our lived-in observable reality. Like, there's a train system that's a gigantic millipede, there are large talking skeletons, and there's a bird who types on a laptop, which is ridiculous. Birds don't have hands. In other words, Skate Story's, well, story is an absolute trip. An inventive sort of affair that would make even the most adventurous European New Wave filmmakers of the 1960s nod in approval if they were to ever perceive video games as an art form, which might be a tough ask because, despite being great talents, those filmmakers were pretentious as fuck. Regardless though, Skate Story's narrative and setting just have a dreamlike quality to them. Overall, it's just a fantastic experience. And that is something that is also reflected by the gameplay by itself. I mean, come on, this is a game where you skateboard through hell. Breaks with reality are part of the territory here. Welcome to the club. However, Skate Story's gameplay is engaging all by itself. The act of skateboarding and performing tricks, albeit a bit more streamlined compared to games like Skate or Tony Hawk, is an absolute thrill. Whether we're playing around with speed or momentum, and whether we perform ollies or kickflips, playing Skate Story is pure bliss, mostly because the controls are incredibly smooth and responsive, and actually timing and executing tricks while at high velocity is a near unrivaled joy. Additionally, Skate Story's pacing enhances the gameplay's fluid nature as well. In fact, the demon Demon regularly adds new tricks to his repertoire, and the level design features impressive variety. Like, there are open areas featuring rails to grind, half pipes to twist to, and optional content to partake in. There's how performing tricks, executing gameplay challenges, and completing tasks, both main story and optional, earns the player points that they can use to customize their skateboard. There's the fact that there are sections focused entirely on speed and momentum. Then there's how Skate Story contains some chill character and storytelling moments that give you a little break from the action. And then finally, there are boss fights, which require the player to string together a variety of tricks in quick succession as if it were a combo and smash a specific area of the ground in order to damage the boss. Meaning that with all of these different gameplay elements, Skate Story just presents the player with many unique gameplay ideas and executes them all impeccably well. Skate Story also features some stylistic flourishes that enhance the game's overall presentation. The synthwave music from Blood Cultures befits the title's chill atmosphere, the variety of colors and neon lights in contrast to the corporatized Underworld conveys an often breathtaking art style, and then there's how our demon main character is made of glass, which means that when you inevitably faceplant off of your skateboard, the demon literally shatters into a billion pieces, which is just a nice touch. Though God help that demon if he ever attends a Greek wedding. Glassware generally doesn't live long in that type of environment. Oppa! Thankfully though, Skate Story is very forgiving in this aspect, because when the demon inevitably breaks, which will happen a lot, there's no live system and the demon essentially respawns immediately. As I said, Skate Story is very forgiving, which was probably the correct design decision because Skate Story is more about fluidity and motion than actual challenge. It's about how you feel in this world. On the whole, Skate Story plays like a dream. Its narrative, gameplay, and just overall presentation all combine to create an experience that's stylistically distinct, a true one of one. And while Skate Story is admittedly a short affair that clocks in at a little over 10 hours, the content within this game is of high caliber, meaning that as a complete package, Skate Story entrances the player with a fun yet chill presentation so good that I didn't mind how the game hypnotized me into this bizarre yet very interesting and memorable world, because Skate Story truly is a vibe.